Welcome to Wickedly Wise Women Entrepreneurs. I'm Constance Drew, your host of the show. And in this episode, I have a very special guest, Stephanie Mojica, with Get Their Attention Now. The show is being sponsored by Barefoot Marketer at www.barefootmarketer.com. Stephanie, I am so glad to have you here. This has been a long time coming. I know we've talked about this many times. Very excited to have you here. And I think my listeners will really get a lot out of just your personal story and the different aspects that you bring about as far as being, you are a wickedly wise woman entrepreneur. So with that said, I know Stephanie personally, very, from the heart here, great person. And Stephanie, I'm going to actually turn it over to you. And if you could please tell us about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Constance. Yes, we had originally connected on Clubhouse about a year ago, so I'm glad to be here. So I'm Stephanie Mojica. I'm a book development consultant and editor. And what that means is I help coaches, consultants, lawyers, other experts really ignite their visibility, credibility, and market reach through the power of writing and publishing a book. Actually, one of my clients at the time of this recording about 10 days ago, launched her first book and immediately landed on 11 best-selling Amazon author categories, real categories too, not the fake scamming ones. So yeah, my passion is really helping people that don't think they're writers get their messages out there. And that comes from my own writing background. I was a journalist for 17 years, still do quite a bit of writing myself. And just over the years have come up with a 9-step process that takes people from their idea to publication.
And Stephanie, that's actually a great point that you brought up, like a 9-step, and it's a proven process that you've worked on over time. And can you give me an idea, like why that is so important to someone and why people should listen for that wording?
Yeah, so I've said this several times. I'm also a writer for entrepreneur.com. And I've said this so many times. Ever since the pandemic, we have an abundance of people calling themselves coaches. And I'm not trying to knock people in general. I'm not trying to knock someone who lost their job and create a legitimate business. But all the Facebook groups I'm in, all the communities I'm in, the second people hear anything about coach or consultant or anything, they really get suspicious. And part of it is because there are people out there, we saw this on Clubhouse some, who say, I'm going to help you make 6 figures and take a whole bunch of money, but they don't have any processes. They're better salespeople than coaches. And I would say my struggle has been, I'm like a better expert consultant than a salesperson sometimes. And so I think it's possible to be both, but it's just so important to have a process, because not because you want to treat everybody the same. And I write about this entrepreneur all the time, but you need to have something to start from. Somebody's come to you, they probably don't have, in my case, they don't have writing experience, or they've written a blog, something like that. They want to write a book, they have no idea how to do it. And without some kind of steps, it's kind of like a 12-step program, it's like you have to have a blueprint, you have to have a baseline and go from there. And I think that's what separates again, I don't want to sound snobby, but I'm just gonna be honest. I think that's what separates the experts that can help people to the experts that are just out there trying to make a buck.
I think that was very well put. And yes, I've seen some of the same situations that you have recently. It seems like there are people that have claimed that there are certain things, or they put a name to themselves, such as coach, and may not have the experience to go behind that. And I think that has kind of hurt the coaching industry. Now, what I really like about you, though, is, like you said, that process. And because you brought up a very valid point as well. If somebody doesn't know Like they just think, oh, I want to write. That's great. That's the passion. That's the dream. But then you're the one that would help them to take that from that into actually the process and making that become a reality. Would that be a correct way to put it?
Yes, very much so. And I've been, gosh, it seems like every week now somebody is publishing a book that I've helped them write, etc. I guess I'm kind of, you know, a midwife, so to speak, although that's not, my languaging. I mean, I don't take all the credit for their accomplishments. So, they have to show up, they have to be willing to commit to the process, they have to be willing to write. Sometimes it's extremely uncomfortable. I've worked with psychologists literally who are sitting there like, I can't get past this mind block, and I help my patients do this all the time. So it's like a combination of like hand holding and practical steps. Like I can literally, there's one man I'm working with right now, and he doesn't mind me saying this. He's a retired police chief out of Kentucky. And so he's dictating his book. He's like telling his stories like the, nice Kentucky gentleman he is. And then, you can turn that into your book. Other folks I work with have existing content and they can use that as a jumping off point for their book. Others, like this client that made 11 best-selling categories, she pretty much did a combination of dictating and writing. So it's just like so important to have the processes and frankly the writing experience. And I'm gonna get on my soapbox a little bit here. There are author coaches out there who have never been paid a dime to write. I have been at networking events where somebody has admitted that they have never been a writer, but they think that they can help people be a writer. I have had to bite my tongue. Um, I really
Yeah.
had to bite my tongue. And, I've seen relationship coaches, and I'm not trying to trash coach industry, have great respect for coaches and consultants. I mean, I work with them myself. But there's a woman calling herself a twin flame relationship coach who is not in a relationship. It's just when you see things like that, or the only like there are business consultants, business coaches out there. They say they help you build a six-figure business. The thing is, the only six-figure business they've ever built is charging you.
Mhm.
And so that's why,
Yeah.
I'm on my soapbox. And I think it's just so important to vet people.
Yeah. Let me ask you, because, again, I think you're bringing up some really great points, and I appreciate your
And I
enthusiasm. Not,
usually don't get this bold about it, but lately I'm just getting really tired of people. I've had people come to me like saying they got scammed on Clubhouse. I mean, you've had some of these conversations as
Mhm.
well. And it's just disheartening. It makes everyone look bad.
Well, and it is sad because, like you said, those of us who are out here trying to do this ethically, honestly, with integrity, we're getting kind of, whether we like it or not, clumped into the ones that are doing quite the opposite.
Mhm.
So that's why I was actually clapping
Mhm.
that you were on the soapbox, because I think it's a message that needs to get out there, and that people
It
do need
does.
to vet when they're working with someone. Like you said, and I've had that question asked to me. How can you help me reach 6 years in my business if you never have? Well, I have. And there's a difference between building a business and going through that step, just like you're talking about as an author,
Right.
to help somebody write. If you don't have that experience, because I'll just throw this very quickly and get back in it with you, Stephanie, but like with degrees, like I have an MBA, and I can tell you though, until I actually built some businesses, the MBA, yes, it helps, but it's until you actually get into the grit of it, which I think is what you have referenced as well, as a writer
Right.
yourself.
Right.
There is something that has been on my mind with you and what you do as well. Like, what do you say to someone who comes to you and they want to write a business book, but as you start working with them, what if that business book turns into something else? Have you had that happen to you before?
You know, I wouldn't say it has happened entirely that way. So most people come to me, they either want to write a business book or they want to like tell a story. Or they kind of want to do a hybrid model, which is what the client I was just talking about did. Like she wanted to honor her daughter's memory because her daughter committed suicide. At the same time, she did want to do a little bit of credibility building, because when you're a published author, especially when you're one of these, coaching consulting professions, it does set you apart. It does show that you actually have something to share, and that you didn't just, you're not just doing it by the seat of your pants. So I think there's some people who, who come to me, they have like a hybrid. Other people, they just want to write the business book. A few people come to me and they want to write a novel or a memoir. Those are usually people who already knew me in some capacity. So, because I've been around the literary world for many years. So, yeah, I mean, I've had people come to me and they intended to write one book and it kind of morphed a little bit along the way.
Okay. And I know I definitely had a writer's block. I've learned that writing, yeah. Let me just say I had to back off of a few things, but just on a personal level as well, because when you write about some things, and I found even writing a business book, sometimes things come up, and you can get writer's block,
Exactly.
and writer's blocks are real, aren't they?
Right, yeah, definitely. And I work with people through writer's block and I've had it myself and I've learned, honestly, it's kind of a myth. Especially when you get the right support. It's just, I mean, I find this, like, especially when I'm writing for myself, it's not for a client or somebody. It's like I tell myself, oh, I don't have anything to write. And I just sit at the computer and do what I tell my clients to do. You sit there and just keep saying you have nothing to write until something comes up. So, but I think I wouldn't call it writer's block. I think part of it is like fear. A lot of people have fear of being seen. I've had a lot of women come to me and they want to write the book, but they're scared to death of what their husband's going to think, their children. Because, a lot of women that I work with, they're in very sensitive professions. Like one woman's a weight loss coach, another deals with women who have been through some sort of trauma, you know, and they have trauma backgrounds themselves. Of course, I have one as well, but it doesn't have to come up in my work. I have more like control over what parts of that story I can tell. But when it's very tied in directly to work you do, you can't avoid it. And that's really gets some women scared. They're scared of, what their loved ones and strangers are going to think. And, you know, it's just, I think it's more of a mindset block and a fear of visibility than anything else in a lot of people I work with.
I, I think that was actually well put, because when I hit my so-called, what I thought was a writer's block was when I had a repressed memory of 40 years ago come up and, man, just hit me like flat in the face. And you brought up something that you don't have to go into a lot of detail, but I really admire what you just shared. I admire that you said that you've had some trauma in your past as well that you've overcome, and it sounds like you're not allowing your trauma to rule you. And can you speak just a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about it. I was bullied severely as a child. I mean, you're talking about things like, I mean, horrible. I went to a Christian school and was horribly bullied verbally and physically by teachers, kids, just a nightmare. Um, I was also in a domestic violence relationship off and on in my 20s and 30s. I actually wound up, and this is fairly recent trauma, and I haven't talked about much, but when I was in Suriname, I was there for almost 3 years. The last month I was in Suriname, I was there alone. My friends had one had gone back to Holland, a wonderful Dutch man. The other was a girlfriend of mine who went back to another part of the country because she had a baby. And I didn't realize how insulated I had been from harm during my time there because people were around, and I was nearly sexually assaulted twice in broad daylight.
Oh my.
I was like physically and verbally threatened, and people would not go away until I was screaming bloody murder. So I've been through stuff.
Well, thank you for being vulnerable with that, Stephanie. I think that it helps our listeners to realize too that yes, this is a women's entrepreneur podcast, but as women entrepreneurs, we are still women, and there's different things that we've gone through.
Yeah. And I mean, and in the middle of all that, like I was finishing up my dissertation
Oh my goodness.
and had like, a bunch of business going on. And I am talking to somebody and dealing with it. I wouldn't say I'm severely traumatized by it, but I am noticing that I'm a lot more fearful than I used to be. Like I was very independent. I lived abroad for 3 years, but it's like, yeah, I can be a little fearful. And I think that combined with COVID, I know I'm back in Los Angeles now. I'm not getting out the way I used to.
I think it's an adjustment for everybody. And yes, I'm glad that
Yeah.
you are taking the steps that you are
Yes.
to get through this. And what would you say to a listener? What kind of encouragement or advice would you give them? And let's kind of take it back a little bit to when you were talking about how people, and you're right, like people maybe not get a writer's block, but they get stuck in that fear. What would you say to
Right.
a listener to help them to move or at least start moving through that?
Well, the first thing I would make sure that if there is some kind of trauma that you have done the proper, whether for you it's therapy, spirituality, religion, because I think there's a huge difference between coaching, consulting, and therapy, and that's a line I really try not to cross. So there have been a couple of women I could tell they just were not ready, and so I gently encourage them to go talk to a therapist. But, I would say if you've done all that work and it's really not a legitimate, psychological, issue that needs to be addressed, I would say the only way is to get through it. If it's like for domestic violence shelters, for survivors, they want you to be at least 2 years away from the relationship before they want you to volunteer. So it's like if enough time has passed, you've done the work, and it's really more of a mindset thing than a psychological thing. I hope this makes sense. It's more of a mindset thing, a psychological thing. I would just invite you to talk to a trusted person. You know, Obviously, I would love it if you would consult with me, but there are writers groups. There are, you probably have people in your life, and just say, I want to do this, but I'm like getting in my own way. And another thing you can do is literally just put that time on your calendar, your writing time, and just make it happen. That's how I and my clients been so successful. You literally have to put it on the calendar as a non-negotiable appointment, and you show up and you write, even though maybe you're writing, I don't know what to write about.
Well, but just the whole, kind of like you talked about processes, right?
Right, exactly.
And I think what you're sharing and what you just shared again, I'm so glad that we are having this interview. I really look forward to it because
Too.
you're really giving some really valuable information, and it's coming from the heart and it's open, and that's what I'm really appreciating. Taking it back to writing a book, how does that help a business? Like, let's say that you are working with somebody who wants to write a business book. How's that going to help them in their business?
I mean, there's myriad ways, honestly. Like, one guy, it was a young man I worked with about 5 years ago. I mean, he got so many requests to speak. He media interviews. I mean, was able to help co-found a drug rehab facility. He was in addictions recovery. Coach some people through that. It's like when you put that book out there, and you actually, and this is the second part, it's not just enough to put the book into existence, you have to talk about it just like anything else in your business. But yeah, once you get that book out there and you're telling people about it, it makes you a thought leader. I think sometimes that word is overused, but I really think it does, because it's not just putting a few posts up on Instagram. I mean, I write for entrepreneur.com. Yes, that has a level of prestige, but still, I'm going to be writing a new book because, I mean, it's not necessarily easy to write for entrepreneur.com or even get in the door, but it's like a lot easier per se to write a blog article than to write a book. So it just shows a level of dedication and leadership and originality and creativity than, even blog posts for, and I'm trying to get in Forbes right now. Don't know if that's gonna happen, but the conversation is open. So it's like you hear a lot of people saying, I want to get in Forbes, I want to get an entrepreneur. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you. It's helpful. I have people contacting me simply through being an entrepreneur. But I know if I had a new book out there about everything I'm doing with people now, it would be way more people contacting me.
Very good. I like the way that, yeah, that you presented that, and because you went a little bit deeper. I think that even myself has gone as far as, because I think, oh, well, if I put out a business book, people know that I'm an expert in business, so to speak, or like on a certain
Right,
topic in business. But what
right.
I liked was you took that further. You took
Hmm.
that further to, like, if somebody's actually committed to that, they're a thought leader. There's more to it than just like, and not downplaying blog articles at all. I know they are timely and they take,
Yeah, they're important, but at the same time, and I'm writing an article about this now, and hopefully it'll be published soon. Really, the time that people are spending creating social media posts that aren't getting seen is time that you could be devoting into creating your book. Because I mean, the algorithms change, it seems, by the hour. It's really difficult to get seen, even with paid ads. There's so much noise out there, and people, I believe me, I've really reduced my social media. Um, because it's just so hard, and sometimes the leads you get aren't the best, you know. So it's like all the time people spend stressing on social media or paying somebody to do their social media, it's going to be so much more useful to do a book. Or, if you honestly don't feel ready for a book, try the guest blogging thing. That's really coming back in vogue now. It was like, in the mid 2000s, it was a big thing. It's becoming a big thing again, because again, it's just really important, and it also develops backlinks to your site. I'm not an SEO expert by any means, but it's just anytime you get in front of other people's audiences, it just brings, I find that when I'm in other people's Facebook groups going live or making posts, I get more attention than from my own social media channels. So it's just like pick a couple things and stick to them. But yeah, I would rather see people working towards a book than spending hours or thousands of dollars on social media.
very valid points as well. Yeah, yeah, I'm kind of seeing that trend myself as far as there's so much noise out there. Stephanie, I could see you like being definitely someone that I would encourage people to reach out to. And on a number of levels, expertise, absolutely. But I think your openness and your vulnerability with us on the show tonight really means a lot. And like, that's kind of the way that I like to present my business and everything that I do in an authentic manner. I know you're the same way. And I think that's really important for people when we talked earlier about being careful about who you're choosing to support you along the way.
Mhm.
I think you would
Right,
be an ideal person because you've got all this knowledge, you've got this expertise, you've got the accolades. But I think you
right,
bring the heart, and I think that you would be able to be, you'd bring a sensitivity that not all people would bring. And I don't
right,
mean it in a not a negative way. I mean like a positive sensitivity, so that I
right,
think you would know how to work with a, for example, if a woman came to you and she had gone through something that was
right.
traumatic, I think that you would have a sensitivity to
Mhm.
know how to step back or push forward a little more with her, if that makes sense. Would that be a good way to put it?
Yeah, and from being a journalist for 17 years, I've learned to like, work with all kinds of people. I've worked with the most conservative Christians to like, transgendered shamans. So it's like, and I can put myself in all of those shoes. So yeah, it's very hard to shock me. And yeah, it's like I know when to push and when not to. There's sometimes when it's not a good idea to push somebody. I've had clients where we voted completely opposite ways and we knew it, but we knew each other's reasons why and respected each other and did the work. And I don't want to get political, but I wish we had more of that in the world where it's like it's not black and white, so to speak, why somebody has one religion and why somebody else has another, or none at all, or the political party. I'm not trying to downplay any of the atrocities, especially as a biracial woman, that have been committed in the name of religion, politics, etc. At the same time, I think it's dangerous to lump everybody in the same category.
Wait, that is so true. I really, yes, I mean, I had really liked you before, you know that, but
Mhm.
the more that you've talked tonight, it just really has brought out this beautiful, intelligent, smart, savvy, expert woman here. So you
Thank
are
you.
definitely a wickedly wise woman entrepreneur.
Thank you.
And one last question I would have you before we wrap this up, and then I'll also give you some time if you would like to speak a little
Sure.
bit more to certain topics. But I know that you're very active in in campaigns. I mean, you do your stuff. You do
Yes.
the work and you do it the right way, and that's another thing
Mhm.
that I've admired. Can you tell me a little bit about the summits that you put on from time to time?
So yes, last year, as the time is recorded, I put it on the Visible Authority virtual event, and that was a summit. We had 30 people. I will probably be running again later this year, probably near the end of the year. That's a great way to really build yourself as a thought leader, build relationships. I would say, interestingly enough, though, being in other people's summits and giveaways, again, anytime I'm in front of other people's audiences, I tend to get more traction. So there's pros and cons to both. And some people don't have the bandwidth to like put on events and be in events. And I have slowed down a little bit, especially since the recent move. But it's just like, maybe try to participate at a couple of the summits and see if you like the energy, the environment, the relationships you're building, and then decide if you want to put on an event of your own. And that's what I did. I've also done some 5-day challenges, and I liked those as well. It's a different energy, but again, and I used to be really heavy into Clubhouse, not so much anymore, although I have been getting back on the app recently. But you have to be aware that trends are going to come and go, and it's the same principles. I don't particularly like video. I have been making myself do it. But if you're not a video person, then go on something like Clubhouse or host your own event or, do something you feel comfortable with, do the guest blogging, write the book, etc. The key is to just find a couple things that work and stick to it. Right now, it seems to be for me doing more the guest blogging and being in other people's events, but I will be hosting my event again close to the end of the year because I have that collateral. I have the website. I have, pretty much the sales pages. It'll just be a matter of switching some things out and picking some speakers, which Constance will definitely be a speaker this time.
Well, you had a really successful summit last year.
Yes, it was successful. It was definitely a lot of work. I think people, and I had a team behind me. I had 3 people work with me because I just made the investment. I can't even imagine if I had tried to do it all by myself. I mean, I had a graphics person, I had a copywriter, I had like a project manager who was also doing all the tech. You don't necessarily need to hire all those people, but I was very busy then, and I'm a good writer, but I'm better at writing for other people about other people's stuff.
Oh,
So so yeah, it's just, and I had a pretty big event. I've seen people have had 1-day summits. I've seen people have 12 speakers. My intention was to have 25. I wound up with 30. So it just depends. The 5-day challenge can definitely be it's less work. Uh, but again, they're all definitely work. So you just have to figure out what works best for you.
and that's what I admire about you, Stephanie. you get out there and you do it. And I've seen that,
Yes, definitely.
that you do it like you said, you're doing all these different avenues, but you're out there doing it. You're out there putting yourself out there. You're offering your expertise. And is there anything in particular that you would like to share with our audience?
So sure, like I said, I'm a book development consultant. I also do book editing, proofreading. Or if you already have an existing book, I can help you come up with like press releases, publicity, etc. So if you are thinking about writing a book, have written one, etc., definitely reach out. You can get my free ebook, Three Things You Must Know Before Writing Your Book, at gettheirattentionnow.com/book. That's gettheirattentionnow.com/book. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. And it's been an honor to be here.
Well, thank you so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I've learned a lot.
Thank you.
And just really admire everything that you've done and everything you're doing.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Again, I want to thank Stephanie Mojica with Get Their Attention Now. This is Constance Drew with Wickedly Wise Women Entrepreneurs. Thank you for listening to our episode, and be blessed in your success.
Awesome.